Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rebecca and Rebecca, where we love books. My name is Rebecca Yager, and my partner in books and reviews and reading and everything else is Rebecca Reed in Indiana. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, everybody. Nice to be here.
And we're glad you're here. And of course, this is one of our favorite times when we get to speak to authors. Earlier this month, we reviewed the book What I Promise You by Liz Tolsma, and Liz is here today. Welcome, Liz.
Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor.
No, we certainly appreciate your time. I'm going to we kind of do a quick bio, and I'm stealing this totally from your website because I love your bio on your website, Liz. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I like the way you start. It's passionate is the best way to describe you. You say you are passionate about writing, about your family, and about God, and we love that. And you say you are blessed to get to work at your dream job every day, and you love nothing better than settling into your comfy office chair at the big desk her husband built for her. How nice. And letting her imagination go crazy. She loves editing and helping new authors. Ooh, maybe we need to talk about that. And you are married to your high school sweetheart and have three children who came to you through international adoption. I think that's fabulous, from different countries, right?
Yes. My son is from Vietnam. I have a daughter from Korea and a daughter from the Philippines. So yeah.
That's amazing, and what joy they must have brought to you. I can imagine.
They were and are still absolute blessings in our life. And people will say, how lucky they are to have us for parents, but really it's the other way around. We are so blessed to have them as our children. I can't imagine my family looking any other way. Yes.
Does adopting internationally or just knowing, because I'm sure you learned more about their countries that they came from, has that influenced any of your writing and researching? Just
Sometimes
curious.
adoption does show up in my books, and sometimes it makes an appearance. I did write a book set in the Philippines that was Remember the Lilies, but otherwise, I haven't written anything set in Asia yet, but it's on the back burner. Maybe one of these days I'll move it forward and get to write some things set there.
That would be fun to see, I think. I was looking at your background, that you pretty much always wanted to be a writer, but as we all find out quickly, writing doesn't always pay the bills. So you thought about journalism, but ended up being a teacher?
That's right. I ended up with a career in elementary education. I taught for 4 years before we started trying to have a family. And it was a blessing. It was a good thing. God always turns everything for his good. We ended up homeschooling for, I believe it was 6 or 7 years. So I did use my education background for quite a while. And since our youngest daughter has special needs, it does come in rather handy having that background and that knowledge too. So
Well,
Yeah,
Rebecca over there is a teacher, yes, as
awesome.
well. So,
yes. I teach high school Spanish and do some coaching and things like that. And I didn't start out to be a teacher. Came into it later in life, but I enjoy it a lot. So I think it is useful in just the experiences of, kind of seeing all the kids and different personalities, and you really can study how people interact really well in a school setting. So I think that's been a benefit for me. I don't know. Elementary is completely different, younger kids than high school, but still, it's a good people like psychology study and what interactions and things like that. So.
That's for sure.
well, I admire anyone who teaches, because it's such an important role to have. Um, the events of 9/11 changed your course a little bit. Can you share a little bit more about that?
Right. So I was still a young stay-at-home mom at the time, and I thought, I have my whole life in front of me. I had a first grader, I had a toddler, and I just thought I had forever. You know, when you're young, you don't think about these things. And then you start hearing about all these young people who lost their lives that day. And it really struck me that my life could be over in an instant. And I wanted to get to the end of my life and say, at least I tried. I didn't want to get to the end of my life and say, I wish I would have. And I never thought it would go beyond, at least I tried. I thought I'd write my one book. I'd say, well, I tried my hand at that. That's it. I'm done. And now I can move on. I crossed that off my bucket list. But God had different plans. And here I am, 30 books deep. And I never dreamed this. He answered my prayers beyond my wildest imaginations.
Well, he does that.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm a little, you are, now that you've gotten into writing and 30 books in, and your schedule is you write 2,000 words a day. That's your goal. You are prolific and sit every day. Well, Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday, sometimes to my husband's consternation on Saturday if I'm particularly busy and have a deadline looming. But that's my goal, is to get 2,000 words a day written. And if I have a general idea of where the story is going, then it's not too hard, because I can sit down and sort of let the story flow and go where it does. I don't outline before I get started, so I'm not held to that. I can really just let my imagination go wild. And that's the fun part of it. The book plays like a movie in front of my eyes. So I'm really just writing down what I'm seeing. So when I'm really in a groove, then I can move along at a pretty good clip. And then when I'm doing other things like laundry or dishes or whatever, I can be thinking about, okay, so now tomorrow, where am I going to take the story? So then I'm ready to go the next day.
That's a
But
pretty good way of doing it, I think. I've noticed, because I listen to most of my books on audio, and I listened to yours on audio. I really enjoyed the narrator, by the way. That she did a really good job. Yeah, it was really good. And I do that too, but I notice that sometimes instead of thinking about my story, I'm listening to somebody else's, and so I have to pay attention to that, because it's because that's a really good time to really mull over things and kind of work through, especially if you have something, coming up that you have to get it right, or you've written something and you're like, how can I fix that? It wasn't quite right. That's a really good time when you're doing all those menial tasks around, and chores and things, to really work on those kind of things. So I think that's a great way to work on moving your story forward.
Yeah. Yeah. It's something I've just found that works for me.
Oh, that's great. Well, I'm thinking as a pantser in a sense, but your books with the detail you put, especially on the historical end, the Echoes of the Past, and the book we're talking about, What I Promise You, it's a split time book. So you had to have done some research. So do you do that ahead of time, or do you leave the, asterisks and say, fill in the blank here later kind of thing? How?
Yeah, a little bit of both. So I do like to have a pretty good idea of the historical background of the book when I get started. And I did have the ability to travel to France and to Spain to research this book. So that gave me a lot to work with to start out. But there were things that, yes, I had the asterisk in there, look this up later, or is this right, or whatever. And those smaller details, then that's what I will go back when I'm editing it, and then I'll fill those blanks in. So kind of do a little bit of both.
Well, we were really curious when we were reading it, how your process with the split time, because you had a three-way split in this book, which was we found that very interesting, and I really liked how you worked in the middle piece, because you really did a great job, I thought, of keeping the identity of the person kind of ambiguous, where it could be a couple of different people, and
From the
so it was really
1950s section, the middle
yeah,
section.
that one, yes, and I liked that, and I thought it was unique, and I just was curious. We were both talking about it on the and wondering, what your process was, is how you fit the stories together, because I know different people write these in different ways, so how do you approach this idea of split time?
Well, it varies from book to book. So with the first book in this series, what I would tell you, I wrote that just the way it appears in the book, back and forth between the two different timelines. With this one, it centers around a maternity hospital. It's an old mansion in the French countryside that has been turned into a maternity hospital. And the day that I went to visit that hospital, I was standing there, and the first chapter just hit me right between the eyes. I knew exactly what I was going to write. And my friend was along as my research companion. And we got back to our Airbnb, and I said, I want to spend the evening with you, but I have to go write this chapter right now before I forget it. And it was the 1955 storyline. And
Mm,
I had no idea who it was. It
oh,
just came out that way. And I'm like, okay, this is great, but I have no clue who you are. So I hope at some point you reveal to me who you are. So that made it easy to keep it ambiguous for all of you, because I had no idea. And then for this one, I wrote the historical timeline, and then I wrote the contemporary timeline. And every now and again, I sprinkled in the 1950, I did a little work on the 1955 one. So that made it tough, because then I had to sort of weave it all together at the end. So I had different colored Post-it notes, one for each timeline, with a little summary of the chapter written on it. And I had that spread out all over my floor. And that allowed me just to kind of move it around. And then I had to, go and stitch it all together. But so that helped me in putting the three timelines together and what order they needed to go in.
that's really fascinating, because I've heard both ways. Like, I've heard people, like you said, do it where you just write everything and it kind of just back and forth and it goes. And then I've also heard this, where somebody writes the entire set, of that story and then writes the other story. So that's really, really neat to know that you've done it both ways.
Yeah, the story, I really allow the story to dictate it. So if the historical is just flowing, then I'll just keep going. I don't want to interrupt that flow. So just depends.
Okay, it's cool.
Yeah. No, well, yeah, we really loved the way the whole story blended. And in fact, in doing our review of it, it was really hard not to give away spoilers, because we didn't want to, you can't say who the 1955 person was, and how Caitlin's stories and Noemi's stories, really do meld together. And actually, both timelines were fascinating to me. So it wasn't that I was, some of these split times I will read and be anxious to get to the other timeline. And this one, I was, fascinated with both, or all three actually. So yeah, you did a great job. And I love your Post-it notes too. I mean, who needs fancy computer software? Let's just get down and say you can really look.
Yeah, I have a writing program on my computer where I could do something like that right there on my computer, but there was just something about having it right there in front of me on those different colored notes. I could take in the entire book in one shot and see if I was balancing it out correctly. And so for me, I just needed to be able to do it that way.
It's like the bird's eye view, right? You can
Right.
actually stand up there and like look at it all, and with the colors especially. I love color coding, so I would definitely go for that idea. Sounds like a great way to do it, really.
Yeah, worked really, really well with this book.
So as you were writing the characters in the books, in this book, does anything jump out at you? The stories, the backstories, did something surprise you, especially as a pantser, as you discovered your characters?
Yeah, I always have an idea who the characters are before I start writing, but I don't really know them super, super well. I allow them to reveal themselves to me as I'm going through and doing the writing. That again is the fun part of it for me. I'm getting to learn who they are. And of course, sometimes then I have to go back and then fix the beginning as I learn more about them. But just their backstories surprised me. Especially with Caitlin, I didn't know what her story was. And again, I don't want to give any spoilers here, so I won't say too much about what it is, but she was going through something. I knew she was really struggling with something, and I didn't know exactly what it was. And then all of a sudden, she sort of let me, I know it sounds weird, but as authors, I'm sure you understand, but she let me know this is what happened to me in the past. This is what my trauma is. And this is the lie I believe about myself. And I'm like, okay, now you make sense to me. And so it sounds very strange, but that's sort of my process.
No, actually, as you said, most writers I know, their characters do talk to them
Yeah.
and people think we're nuts.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
so
No,
the
they're really
editing.
simple. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm so sorry, Rebecca.
Fine.
I was just going to flip to editing because then editing must be a big part of your writing process or the rewriting process. All writing is rewriting. Yeah.
Yeah. It is. Very often my first draft is a hot mess and resembles very little what the finished product is going to be. I heard somebody say that a pantser's first draft is really a very, very, very detailed outline is what it is. I don't know about that. I think it's more than an outline, but I do go back. I have things to fix, and that's when I really fill it out with descriptions and settings and that kind of thing, and kind of put it all together and make sure it all fits and make sure there aren't any plot holes, that's why it's wonderful to have beta readers and critique partners and editors to help me see where I've missed things. That's one of the pitfalls of being a pantser, is that I think it's a little easier to wind up with plot holes, but I can't write with an outline. It makes me want to break out in hives. So
Pantsers say that a lot. I think that it
Yeah.
feels like their creativity is stifled somehow. But then the plotters are like, no, I got to know where I'm going.
yeah. It's funny how different each of us are, but whatever your process is, whatever works best for you, that's how I think you should write. So there's no right way or wrong way. It's what is your way. That's the best way.
Yes.
I think that's absolutely right. And that's great advice for any writer, new writers coming up. You find your way into your process. But like most writers, when you have your tough day, I hear chocolate is a friend of yours as well. Yes.
A dear, dear friend. Yes, I consume far too much of it. There are always going to be disappointments when you're an author. It's sort of cyclical. It's either feast or famine, it seems, in the publishing world. You either have too much work or no work. And so when those hard days come, when I'm maybe stuck with a book or when I get a rejection or something like that, somebody told me this advice a long time ago before I was even published. Give yourself a day to cry and eat as much chocolate as you want. And then the next day, you get right back on your keyboard and you start writing again. And it was really the best advice that I could have ever received, because it's easy to fall into that self-pity mode, but I would never be where I am right now if I had just stopped writing and given up at that point. So a little bit of chocolate, a box of Kleenex, and then the next day I'm back at it.
Well, I think that holds true for like contest scores too. You can read the scores and read the feedback. And if it's tough, put it away for a little while, go have your cry until you can, get the jewels out of it. So whoever says writing is glamorous, Yeah, sorry, it's not.
Definitely not.
It's hard work, but we get gems of books like this. Let's get a nice close up of it. There we are. But
Mhm.
this is actually book 2. You mentioned book 1, which is what I would tell you.
Yes.
And then when is book 3 is not out yet? Later this year, right?
In December, it's due out. So that is What I Left for You.
What I Left for You. Have you finished it? Is it turned in?
It
Oh,
is turned in and I'm waiting for my edits to come back, which should be any day now. I keep opening my email every morning expecting to see it there. So
Mhm.
well, that should be fun. What's next after this series? Do you have any new ideas? I mean, yeah, well, everyone will get these 3 books, but for what are you going to work on for 2025?
for 2025, I have a book coming out in Barber Publishing's series, A Day to Remember. So we authors who are in it, we lovingly refer to this as the disaster series because the acquisitions editor who came up with this idea didn't have a title for the series when she sent it out to the agents to send it out to us. And so that's what we lovingly refer to it as. But it's true American disasters. And so, like the first book, and I'm going to kick myself for not remembering the author of this first book, was about the Johnstown, Pennsylvania flood. And so the book centers around that. So they go from there. And so my book is about the Peshtigo fire in Peshtigo, Wisconsin. It happened on the night of October 8th, 1871, which is the same night as the Great Chicago Fire, which is why
Oh,
nobody knows about the Peshtigo fire because Chicago was a big town. The word got out,
right.
and Peshtigo, their telegraph lines had all been burned through, and they couldn't get word out for days. And in fact, the governor of Wisconsin was in Chicago trying to help Chicago, and there was a train load in Madison ready to go to Chicago, and the governor's wife said, "Oh no, you're not going." As soon as she got word, she said, "Oh no, we're going to go the opposite direction, and we're going to go to Peshtigo." So I'm so thrilled. This is a book that I wrote, like my second or third book that I ever wrote. I never thought would get published. I am reworking the entire thing, so don't worry. It's not like something I wrote 15 years ago, 20 years ago, but I'm so thrilled to get a chance to finally write this story. So
Gosh, it sounds fascinating. And the exact same night
Yeah,
as the Chicago fire. I mean,
yes.
just oh, see, I
that's
love
interesting.
yeah, love
Yeah,
tidbits like that. You know, what did we
yeah,
miss? Because we were all focused over here. You know,
right.
I'm excited you get to write that. Well, share with everyone your website address where they can keep in contact, and so they can keep an eye on book 3 of the Echoes of the Past series, as well as what you're doing next.
Sure. My website is liztolsma.com, and all my social media and all my books and everything, links for them are all right there.
That's great. So Liz Tolsma, last name is Tolsma. Yes, that's way too easy. I mean, just
Oh, you don't know how many people get that so wrong.
I kept
oh,
wanting to put a Z in it instead of an S.
A lot of
I bet
people,
you see that a lot. Yeah, because that was I didn't really look at it well, and then I was writing, and I'm like, something's wrong with that. Then I had to look it up. I was like, oh, it's an S. Okay, not a Z. So,
yeah. Well, someone with my last name, I pay attention because nobody spells or pronounces my last name well at all. So, but anyway, well,
yeah.
Liz, we are so appreciative of your time. We both, Rebecca and I, just raved over this book. Deep topics, but so emotional, filled with so much hope, really.
Mhm.
At the end, the transformations of your characters, of what they went through, both present and past. We truly, truly enjoyed it. So everyone needs to just get all 3 of the books in this series.
Yeah.
And you know, The third one will make a nice Christmas present this
There
year later on. So we appreciate your time. Thank you again, everyone. LizTolsma.com. Go check her out and find out what she's up to next, because you will be a regular reader, I think, once you get through, if you haven't read any of her books previously. So Rebecca, next month we have a new author for us.
Yes, Abby Downey. It's her third historical romance, but this one is it's set in the 1900s. So we're dealing with auto racing and a woman auto racing driver. So we're excited to talk to Abby about how she came up with those ideas. And please join us. And we have audio, we have videos, so you can get all those links on our website at rebeccaandrebecca.com. And we're so glad you joined us today and hope to see you again soon.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.